My name is Caroline Poole. I was born Caroline Gaspar, or Gaspar, as it is in Hungarian, but I found out recently that originally it was Gross. I've had this suitcase for many, many years, and it's been up in the loft, and I have not opened it or thought about it. Well, the suitcase represents for me a big, big world, some of which I don't have any experience of. It's linked to my past parents, my grandparents, who came from Hungary, and also me as I was growing up. The suitcase came with my grandparents, Hungarian Jewish grandparents, in 1946. My grandfather was very keen that my father should get out of the business, the family business, and he was sent to Zurich to study, and he came to Britain in 1932, and he worked as an engineer here, but he was regarded as an enemy alien really until the end of the war, 1946, even though he was developing machines. In 1944, over nearly 450,000 Jews were transported to Auschwitz between May and July of 1944. My grandparents, in order to survive the war, hid in cellars, and there's a story about how on one occasion the rug that they put up against the window was shot. There are bullet holes that were repaired when they finally came to England with it. I have no knowledge of how they survived during the war in the cellars. I don't know how they got their food, how they kept warm. I don't know anything. I just know that they were lucky, very lucky to survive. I was really shocked to discover that in my grandparents' family, there were 6 of them, 6 children, and my grandfather was the 3rd son. But there were 6 altogether, and at least 10 of those in the family have perished in the concentration camps. They all died in 1944. The first eldest son, Isidor, had lost 2 children, Bondi and Vera. The 4th child was actually a girl called Rosa, and she married and had 4 children. All of them died in the concentration camps, and including her and her husband. As I'm discovering more about my Jewish heritage, it's become a personal story. My grandparents, in order to survive, were baptised in 1944 in Hungary, and this must have saved their lives. My father got them out in 1946, and at that point they still had possessions which they must have hidden. And my father, being an only child, looked after them when they arrived and found them a flat in Maida Vale. The suitcase obviously went there, and it then presumably came to my father when they died. It was a large suitcase and could fit in lots of interesting papers and documents and photographs which were important to him, and especially as he'd also had to leave Hungary as a young man. So everything about his past was important to him. He married my mother in 1949. She was a Christian. I expected to find in the suitcase some things which were there, but also there were papers and documents which are in Hungarian and in German, and there were obviously lists and letters. They needed permits, and there was a lot of communication with the War Office. I suppose I expected to find photographs, but there aren't that many relating to the time in Hungary. The most surprising thing, or the most emotional thing that I found in the suitcase was my grandfather's kippur. And this is it. Both my grandfather and my father kept this kippur because it represented something so important and part of their lives. They left behind a home, a house, a timber business. But as Jews, probably during the war, they must have lost a lot. My father took my mother and I back to see it once, but there was nothing really to see. It had all gone, but the place was what mattered. I presume that the Germans had come and destroyed it all. So it was very emotional for my father and for us, and for me even at a young age. I wanted to know about my past, my father and his life, and my grandparents. All my Hungarian relations, I feel, were special. There were very few of them left because most of them perished. My father and grandparents were, while they were Jewish, they were mindful about being Jewish, and having suffered and experienced such terrible things, I think were concerned that I shouldn't suffer. And so while it was never denied or brushed under the carpet, it was never brought to the fore in the sense that they would actively tell me too much. Actually, it was my mother who told me more about their suffering and what had gone on and in the camps, the concentration camps. I'm not sure how old I was when my mother talked about the war, but she felt very passionately, and because she spoke German, she could communicate with my grandparents, which must have been a great help for everybody. They were finally naturalized in 1953, but the restitution, they were applied, or my father helped them to apply for restitution from the German government, and they did in fact receive, it was a great long correspondence, but they did receive Deutschmarks, 49,000 odd Deutschmarks, which I don't know how much it was in value, the equivalent value in now. I'd like to put in my suitcase things that represent me, both now and in the past. I think I've covered quite a lot of the things that I put in from the past, but what about now? What would I put in now? I'd put in something obviously about Rob, my husband, and about my friends who are very, very important to me. And I have a lot of very good friends, and some I consider like family. And I would want something from each of them to be put in the suitcase. In addition, my paintings, perhaps my self-portraits, and some of the paintings of places and things that have meant something to me in my life. My legacy, I'm fearful of what will happen to my legacy, because there will be no one younger really that is interested enough to understand what those things in the suitcase mean. And it saddens me, and I know it's part of how it will be. It will either be, the suitcase will either be put in a loft or it will be destroyed, and with it all the memories and all the things that are meaningful to me. Final thoughts about opening and closing the suitcase today are that I've discovered new and different things than I was expecting, and I want to put back something that is important to me. And as I've said, I will then close it again and put it somewhere safely, and perhaps ask someone to look after it when I'm dead. I hope that my paintings will also go down, be recognised somewhere, somehow. And I think that's really my legacy, my only legacy.